Hey, Alex, Jeff, Rosemary, Ashton, and iPhone. Good to see you all.
Good to see you.
Yeah. So Alex has a treat for us, some reflections, which we've just tentatively titled Goethean Perspectives on the Philosophy of Freedom. And so this is kind of a warm-up session, totally independent of the interdisciplinary astronomy reading group that will start next week. Wow. But figured this would be a great opportunity to get the spiritual juices flowing, warm up our hearts and enliven our minds as we dive back into another text together. I'm grateful to Alex for volunteering to lead this session. Hey, Angus. So yeah, Alex, with that, why don't you take over and lead us into this inquiry?
Sure. So just wondering if my microphone is working and you can all hear me.
It's working okay. Maybe you could check to make sure you have the right one selected. It's a little bit.
Is it low?
Exactly.
Try again. Oh no, I don't hear anything. You could go back to what you had. It was working. I'm just complaining.
That's fine.
Oh, that's very good now.
Okay, good. Yeah, so yeah, nice to see you all. And yeah, nice that this opportunity came up. I'm happy to be sharing some thoughts. And my intention is to present some ideas on the art of Goethean conversation, as it was sort of started by the work of Marjorie Spock, and then so I'll have an introduction to that. We'll do an exercise, and then I will try and put it into context with the philosophy of freedom, as we've studied before. Quite a few years ago, I had a chance to study Goetheanism a bit from an artistic perspective at Emerson College in the UK. And we had a chance to practice Goethean conversation at that course. So that's where the inspiration and the material that I'm going to share today is coming from. Yeah, I've prepared a presentation just in case I don't forget everything that I want to share as well. So maybe I'll try and share that. If you can allow me to share my screen.
Yep, you should have that ability now.
This one. Okay. So in the
Alex, sorry to interrupt you, but just for the sake of how I concentrate and take notes, will you make your presentation available after, or should I focus on the information as it's coming?
I was thinking of making it available on Slack, on our channel at Slack afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So I think this idea of Goethean conversation comes from a paper by Marjorie Spock entitled group moral artistry, if I'm correct. And at the beginning of this paper, she quotes from a fairy tale by Goethe, The Green Snake and the Beautiful Lily. So I'll just read it. Whence come you hither? Asked the Golden King. Out of the clefts where gold dwells, replied the serpent. What is more glorious than gold? Light. What is more quickening than light? Conversation. So Goethe was very fond of conversation, especially in his friendships and letters that he wrote. And he admired it as an art in itself. So, of course, so Goethean conversation goes back to Goethe and his phenomenology, I would say. And at the heart of that, we could say there is this idea of a delicate empiricism. So in Goethe's words, that delicate empiricism makes itself utterly identical with its object, thereby becoming true theory. And so one way to see this delicate empiricism is that it refers to his holistic and sensory-based approach to observing and understanding the natural world, emphasizing intuitive insight in order to capture its underlying qualities. And I think there are many ways in which, I've seen, so Marjorie Spock in her paper speaks about some qualities that she felt were needed to develop by the group and its participants for a true conversation to be to have this quality that comes from the Goetheanist perspective. And there have been some other people that have expanded on those qualities. But when I was at Emerson College, one of the practices that we had there regarding Goethean conversation was very much rooted in the Goethean scientific method. So I think most of you are aware of that method or acquainted with it, but here is a reminder. So the Goethean method is primarily phenomenological, and it involves the contemplation of a phenomenon to examine its logic, wholeness, and essence. And this division into 4 stages is something that I taken from a book by Nigel Hoffman, but I've also looked into other authors or Goethean scientists that use this division into 4 stages, more or less, and I would say that this is more or less a description of them. So in the first stage, there is a recording and describing of the phenomenon using one's physical senses, and one tries to put aside
we seem to have lost you there, Alexander.
Yeah, your mic has cut out.
one's subjective attitudes, theories.
Oh, it's trying to come back.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and use my other microphone
Okay.
because my desktop becomes a bit more busy. But let's see. So how does it work now? Can you hear me better?
Sounds great.
A lot better, yeah.
Okay, good. So going on to stage 2. So in stage 2, there's an arrangement or organizing of these recorded observations in order to establish a coherent spatial and temporal relationships, revealing the dynamic nature of the phenomena. I think if some of you have observed Goethean scientists arranging leaves in a sequence, this would be what stage 2 refers to. And in stage 3, the phenomena is contemplated as a whole in relation to its environment and even to the observer's own consciousness. So I think here the wholeness of the phenomena becomes important, and stage 4 reveals the essence of the phenomena as an idea or theory. We arrive at its archetype. So a quick and maybe a bit simple way to go through these 4 stages, but I hope that I've come across with the main idea of it. Let's see. Okay. So as I said, when I practice Goethean observation at Emerson College, we structured the conversation into distinct rounds or stages that were very similar to these 4 stages of the Goethean method of science. And looking into different ways in which people have tried to create a framework for Goethean conversation. So there seems to be an importance that is given to establishing some sort of framework in order to develop the practice. And this practice that I'm going to present, I've called it the elements of Goethean conversation. I felt it's, as I wrote here, it's imbued with the spirit of a delicate empiricism. So I'm going to present the stages. We could call this the first round. So usually there's a theme that is chosen. And in the first round, one begins by naming and reconstructing the various parts of the theme. So the theme can be a text, a title, it can be a picture, it can be anything. So the group shares, each one shares one's observations grounded in the realm of the physical senses. Facts and terms are defined and distinguished from interpretative aspects. And the idea is to construct a coherent framework devoid of personal perspectives or adjustments to ensure that the content is thoroughly clarified. So I think here we are trying to arrive at a clarity of the theme together. In the second round, one progresses to unveil the connections woven within the theme's components. And one shares the existing relationships between different parts of the theme and underlying meanings and associations with other concepts and ideas. So very much as we are used to when discussing something, we like to compare, find other relationships, other ideas. But this is what one would explore in the second round. In the third round, one enters the realm of personal resonance with the content. And here the emotive, cognitive, introspective impact of the theme upon oneself becomes important. So the subjective aspect. And one can express how it relates to our personal human situation, our feelings, attitudes, and also acknowledge the author's intended message. And finally, the fourth round reveals the core of the theme, expresses its fundamental nature, spirit, essence, or being in one's own words. And here one can be succinct, as quick as light. Now, up until here, I think you've seen that there's a similarity to the scientific method that I presented before. But I wanted, when thinking about this before, I added a fifth round that I felt was important, in which one reflects upon the implications of the theme upon one's own actions, personal narrative, and the broader societal context. Conveying the transformative impact the theme might exert upon moral thought and action, both personally and for the larger world. So the moral aspect I felt was missing from these elements and becomes a final round to discuss or to incorporate in the conversation. So hoping that this is more or less clear. Are there any questions at this moment? Maybe?
Alexander, could you just flash up the third round again? I've just been doing little screenshots. Thank you. Hold on a sec. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So to make this a bit tangible, I can say that in English. I was thinking about just doing a short exercise. And we'll just try to go through these 5 rounds together and have sort of a Goethean conversation. Now, the setup is a bit, how to say, so yeah, it's quite structured, but you can see these as if we were learning music, we would start by learning the scales before improvising around music. So this is the way this will be set up. So we will try to flow in a circle, one contributor at a time. And each one of those elements that I presented will constitute a round of the conversation. Each contribution should be limited to a clear and distinct idea. So no big discussions. And I think because we are not a large number, we could make it so the first and the second round, it could be quite sort of free, maybe max 2 rounds, or 2 contributions each. But if there's more to say, one could continue. And we try to make the final 3 rounds just 1 contribution each. And I'm going to use the chat. Let's see. I'll just make the I'll just make a list of the circle just for make this a bit more practical in how we can go around based on how you appear on my screen. We have Jeff. We have more. And I don't know if Rosemary and Wolfgang are participating because I don't see them now, but I'll put them here. So if we go around in that order, and I'll also try and share what I wrote in each round before we begin. But as a theme, so I decided to make this simple. So I chose a painting that is a bit of a, maybe a bit of a twist in a philosophical theme that is well known. But I was thinking that we also try and be aware of how each round is, so how we are contributing to each round and not be so so that we don't get too deep into the theme itself. Let's see. Where is I've lost, there it is. Okay, so one would begin with the first round, for example, regarding this painting, just by naming what we see in this picture. So if I begin, I would say, I see a moon. And then if we want to continue, Matt.
I see light in a dark room.
We didn't hear you, Bart. I think you were muted.
Yeah. I see a ladder.
I see 2 people at the foot of the ladder that are tapestry-like.
I see a lot of detail around the edges, intricate detail.
I see one of the human figures is up towards the top of the ladder with his arms extended out towards the moon.
I see 7 people.
I see, okay. I see an open window and stars shining in.
I see 2 women holding 2 children.
I see the man on the ladder who appears to be wearing a kind of Joker costume, clown costume of some kind.
I see the person at the top of the ladder who seems to be opening the window that looks out into the stars and the moon.
I see to the left and to the right the charcoal-like black-grey colours.
I see what look to be ladders around the edges and small human forms doing seemingly acrobatic, maybe that's too much interpretation, activities, and a tent at the bottom with the glowing entrance, it looks like.
I see the figure up on the ladder who has clothes that are all vertically striped.
Mhm. I see a distribution of all the primary colors the people are wearing.
I see strange figures at the edges in blue.
Anyone else who wants to add something to this round?
Yeah, just noticing that the everyone on the ground is wearing one color. The person on the ladder is wearing many colors.
It seems like everybody on the ground is asleep.
Okay, so maybe we move on. Also seeing that time goes by quickly. So if we go to the second round, I'll paste it into the chat. We can start by describing some relationships that we see. So it could be, for example, there's a difference between the people on the ground sleeping and this figure walking up the ladder that seems to be awake.
Yes, and I realized in my prior comment by referring to the man on the ladder as a clown or a jester that was maybe more interpretation than just stating sensual facts, but nonetheless he seems to be, he's elevated above the others, he's awake as you said, and he's looking at moonlight and starlight, which is still quite bright in this room, but it's not sunlight. Well, it's reflected sunlight, I guess, but we're looking at the night sky here.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I see the two mothers or the women are not as fast asleep as the two people who are on the ground. And I see this as a certain differentiation of attentiveness between the three groups. The person on the ladder, the two women who are sitting up, and the two who are really out of it on the ground.
I'm looking at the person on the ladder. The person on the ladder seems, I'm wondering, you know, one leg, the left leg is up as if this person is still kind of moving upward on the ladder. And I guess I'm kind of imagining that this person is kind of on their way up the ladder, getting ready to journey out into the stars.
The characters all seem woven out of some type of fabric. The two lying at the bottom of the ladder seem most clearly to me to be lying on something woven. So there's a feeling about wovenness at the base of the picture. And there's also that feeling about what Matt called the Joker there, but the rest of it doesn't have that feel.
There's I feel like there's a connection between the stars, like just in the way that they appear, like all the intricate, you know, the array of stars and the way the light is represented as, you know, a multitude, and the way that around the edges that there's a similar multitudinal quality. Yeah, so there feels to be a continuity between the starlight and the stars and what's going on around the edges.
Mhm.
I see a repeating geometrical relationship of a number of sets of lines, each set containing parallel lines, like the lines on the floor and the lines, well, in both dimensions of the outlining the shape of the window, the two lines, you know, building the ladder, each rung of the ladder in the other dimension, and perhaps something else that I'm not seeing right now.
Any other contributions for this round?
There appears to be many ladders, not only in the middle, but also at the edges. So it's a recurring theme. There are many ladders and people climbing or flying with the ladders.
It's not perfectly clear to me, but I think that you can decipher 7 rays of light coming out the bottom of the window. A few of them behind the ladder are a little bit obscured, but if I fill in what's blocked, so just as there are 7 people, there seem to be 7 rays of light here.
I think his open arms are are similar to the open window. I don't know if we're in interpretation here, but I would say he's very receptive. He's emanating receptivity and openness. Or if it's a he, the person on the ladder.
I'm being strongly reminded of ayahuasca-inspired art, especially when I look around the side of the image. This use of dots is quite clearly, so like what you call that, there's a specific style, but it's like this use of dots to create images, but it also has this ayahuasca inspired art quality about it.
I was thinking we could move on and try to be even more going in more into the personal interpretive realm. So I can say, to begin, I can relate to this polarity between a dimension in me sleeping and another dimension in me being awake, seeking.
Yeah, there's I feel a sense of illumination happening, but a subtle illumination. And as someone pointed out, there's something about there's the lunar light coming in, and then someone pointed out that the two mothers seem to be more awake than the two other who appear to be men or adolescents who are asleep, and the two mothers are caring for children and sitting up more. And so there's something about this lunar illumination that seems to be reflected in that.
Yeah, I feel myself kind of just thinking and reflecting on my own dream life, and just thinking about the person on the ladder, and that the kind of the space that he's in between the people sleeping on the floor and the cosmos outside the window.
It's a very active, the person on the ladder is very active, whereas the rest of the people are passive, and it's a combination of receptivity and action that's very arresting. Talk about delicate empiricism. This is spelling, putting it in pictorial form.
I'm somewhat constantly drawn towards the framework, the blue framework with all the small, delicate figures. And it's confusing because it's not clear whether this is inside or outside, whether this is the sky or whether that's inside the room.
I'm drawn to the awe that's been inspired into the person on the ladder with his upward glance, this sheer amazement of being confronted with such a beautiful sky, and personal experience I had the first time I ever meditated.
Mhm.
When you first showed this image, Alex, I was like, wow. So that was the feeling that I experienced, like a kind of very similar actually to the feeling I have when I look up at the stars at night and there's just so many. Also, for me, what contemplating the image has stimulated is just this reminder of how much is present that I'm usually unaware of in my regular state of consciousness. That's yeah, what it has stimulated for me.
I relate to the main figure, the one up on the ladder, particularly in terms of this progress he's made up into the light, into waking consciousness. However, at the same time, I'd also say I relate to the fact that such progress is still within the relative darkness of night, and we're not even in full sunlit daytime consciousness yet.
Okay. I think everyone has contributed to this round. And for the next one, in short words, try to express the essence or spirit of this thing. Yeah, I can begin. And for me, the words that came for me was, it requires some foolishness to leave the comfort of our dreaming life.
I'm glad you brought up the Fool. It feels to me like the beginning of the Fool's journey into or towards wisdom from a realm of sleep and dreams, though starting that journey gently, again, not rushing to the light, but starting with the light of the night. Yeah.
So this this really kind of brings me to think about kind of standing on the edge of the normal waking consciousness and consciousness that lives in the entirety of the cosmos, and the enormity of that.
The peace, the gentle, beautiful peace of the night is something that we can always carry within us.
I guess for me, just, yeah, a state of awe. But I'm also reminded of that Shakespeare quote that people use often. There is more in heaven and earth than your philosophy can comprehend, or something like that.
I'm thinking of the Goethean formula that color emerges out of the interplay of light and dark, but I'd say not only color, but also life and consciousness, even in the relative darkness of the night.
Speaks about opening up to the vastness of space and depth and the totality of the cosmos. And the process of opening towards that.
You want to share something, Rosemary?
I used to wander around and do things at night when the rest of the family was asleep, so I can also tap into that kind of memory.
So I'm just wondering if we're scheduled to end at the hour, Matt.
Yeah, I do need to run at the top of the hour, but if other folks want to stay, I can certainly leave the Zoom session going.
But then I think I'll just move on. We'll leave the 5th round, and maybe you can just think about it for yourselves, what that would be. And so I wanted to move on and just put this into context with the philosophy of freedom. So when we are studying the philosophy of freedom, Angus presented this diagram. Comes from a book by Sergei Prokofiev, where he explores themes of the philosophy of freedom and anthroposophy. And basically he presents these 7 ideas of percept, mental picture, intuitive thinking, the exceptional state, moral imagination, moral intuition, and moral technique. I hope these are still fresh in your memory from that study. And let's go on. And then one way to put the Goethean method of science in the same diagram would be, and this is always a danger to try to equate things like this, but we would have physical thinking along with intuitive thinking, imagination, inspiration, and intuition on the upper part. So physical thinking related to the sensible world, and imagination, inspiration, intuition, the super sensible world. And if we think about Goethean conversation, so for me, I will speak about these words that I've put there in a moment, but for me, the conversation that we had is a way to go round the themes of the philosophy of freedom in a group, in an experience of community. So in the first round, we are using percept, mental picture, and maybe a bit of intuitive thinking to approach the theme. The second round brings us to moral imagination. Then the third round into moral intuition. And the fourth round into moral technique. And through moral technique, the fifth round would bring us back into the world of percept again. So here again, put together. So these words, communion, transubstantiation, offering, revelation, my teacher offered them, and they come from a set of, I think, practices and ideas that Rudolf Steiner offered as the reversed ritual. And maybe I won't say, I don't know that much about it as well, but maybe I won't say much about it now. But I wanted to end. So this is two quotes that speak about the spirit of Goethean conversation. So Goethean conversation works from the understanding that the spiritual world wants to be known as much as we want to know it. We cultivate a social soil for the work of spiritual beings and/or archetypal presences. A true Goethean conversation takes place across the threshold, in the etheric world where thoughts are intuitions. One can sharpen one's sense of the necessary to the point where a conversation develops like a living organism, every part essential and in balance. Only then can a conversation find its way to necessity. So thank you for that. Yeah, and I would happy if we have some time to have a conversation around this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks, Alex, for guiding us through that. I think this is a valuable exercise that I'll take with me. I hadn't considered applying Goethe's method to the art of conversation, but I can see how fruitful it is for building up ideas together in an organic way that's ordered and organized. There's room for plenty of imagination, but in building up in this structured way, it's more likely, I think, that we arrive at an insight that we can all share. So it's a very helpful method.
I'm glad. I was glad to hear that they were actually practicing Goethean conversation at Emerson College. I've often heard about it and read that booklet by Marjorie Spock several times, but I've never actually found a group that was able to practice it together consciously and conscientiously. So thanks for bringing it back to our view. And I think that was the idea that if you practice it enough, it will become a new skill that will arise from, it'll be imprinted in your etheric and come to the fore in a new way in further conversations. I like that. Thank you for bringing that to light.
Thanks, Rosemary.
Just curious about the group at Emerson College. I mean, is that Emerson students, or is that like a group that is kind of part of the community there? I mean, is that like a class that people are taking at Emerson, or?
Yeah, that was a course I participated in. So these conversations were part of that, the curriculum of the course. And this was maybe 8 years ago. And I don't live in the UK, in Forest Row, where Emerson is. So I can't say if that has continued in other groups.
Oh, you were already unmuted, Angus. I think you.
Okay, so I like the way that it creates space for conversation. Often in conversation is like there can be a competitive aspect, like I've got to get my idea out, and when you know that there's a structure in place where everybody's going to get a chance to say what's on their mind, that has a relaxing effect on the conversation, which also allows thoughts and imaginations and intuitions to flow more easily. And I also think helps us listen better to each other as well. So thanks for sharing, Alex.
Yeah, I also appreciate that aspect of the structure. In June, I was at the Nature Institute in New York, which is this organization that's dedicated to Goethean science. And so we were doing observation work together and experiments. And then we would come together and circle up and kind of unfold a sequence like that about our observations. And it was great. It really felt like we were, you need more multiple perspectives to start to see phenomena more clearly. So thank you.
It's not radically different for our group, but I think this is a good primer for the piece we're about to go into. And as I say, not that we haven't done this, but really bring out this conversational aspect to deepen it for as we go through the lectures.
Yeah. We'll see how many end up joining us for interdisciplinary astronomy. If it is a larger group, it might make sense to have some structure to, I mean, we will have someone introduce each week, but some structure to the sharing of ideas and insights. So we'll maybe we can all give some thought to that and chime in our Slack or on email to think about if we want to institute something quite similar to what Alex has shared, or some variation upon it, just to make sure that there's not that competitive sense of urgency to get ideas into the mix when we can establish a approach that will make everyone feel like there will be a chance for you to share. So no need to rush, because this is certainly a Goethean approach to astronomy. Yeah. So we should approach it with a Goethean method. All right, well, go ahead, Alex.
So I think that structure might be helpful or maybe not. It depends. But I also think one aspect of this way of practicing is also to develop, I think it's a bit like Rosemary is saying, the skills for one personally. So even if the conversation is not structured in this way, I sometimes realize in myself how I can still go through the rounds in a way. I can structure my own thinking along with the conversation. in the way that I'm practicing these skills. So I think that is also valuable for oneself individually, to see these as skills to be practiced and developed in order to deepen one's participation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, all right, we're at the top of the hour. Very much enjoyed this gift that Alex has given to us. So thank you, Alex.
Yeah, thanks.
And
Thanks a lot,
to all
Alex.
of you, yeah, for your contributions, and hope to see you all next Thursday, or sorry, Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Tuesday, yeah.
Oh, is it?
I meant Tuesday.
Oh, okay. Right, okay.
The 22nd,
Yeah.
Tuesday
Good you
at
said
9
that.
a.m. Pacific. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll send an email reminder too. All right.
Cheers.
Well, take care, everyone. See you in a few days.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, everybody.